From Elon Musk's space-age fortune to a king so rich he could buy entire continents. This is not just a list of wealthy people, it's a journey through time, and trust me, some of these numbers will absolutely blow your mind. We're starting in the 21st century and moving backward to find the richest person of each era. We'll see how they made their fortune, what it's worth today, and how they shaped history. Let's get started. Our journey begins with the 21st century, and no surprises here. The wealthiest person is none other than Elon Musk. The mastermind behind Tesla, SpaceX, and multiple tech ventures, Musk's fortune comes from electric vehicles, space exploration, AI, and even finance. At current time, his net worth is estimated at $400 billion. Adjusted for inflation, it remains one of the highest individual wealth accumulations ever seen. His wealth represents the rise of the digital and technological era, where innovation is the new gold. But let's step back a century to a time when industrial empires ruled the world. In the 20th century, one name stands above the rest: John D. Rockefeller. The founder of Standard Oil and America's first billionaire, Rockefeller monopolized the oil industry and built an empire that made him the richest man of his time. His peak wealth in 1913 was $1.5 billion, which translates to around $400 billion today. His influence led to economic regulations that still shape industries today. He was not just a businessman, but a philanthropist, donating vast sums to medical research, education, and public health, setting a precedent for modern billionaires. Before oil, the world was built on steel and railroads. So let's step into the 19th century. Meet Andrew Carnegie, the Scottish-American industrialist who dominated the steel industry. His fortune came from steel production and railroad investments, and at his peak, his wealth, adjusted for modern values, was around $372 billion. What set Carnegie apart was his philanthropy. He donated vast sums to build libraries, universities, and charity. Interestingly, he once wrote an article titled "The Gospel of Wealth," advocating that the rich have a moral duty to give back. By the time of his death, he had given away about 90% of his fortune, making him one of the greatest philanthropists in history. Now, we step into an era of powerful empires, the 18th century. The 18th century's wealthiest figure was Mir Osman Ali Khan, the last Nizam of Hyderabad. His immense fortune came from land ownership, diamond reserves, and taxation. His peak wealth is estimated at $230 billion in today's value, making him one of the richest rulers in history. He owned the famous Jacob diamond, a 185-carat gem he reportedly used as a paperweight. Despite his vast wealth, he was known for his frugal lifestyle, often wearing simple clothing and using the same old pair of shoes for years. But before him, there was another ruler whose treasure trove remained legendary. Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor of the 17th century, amassed enormous wealth through imperial taxation, land conquests, and war revenues. Estimates suggest that, in relation to Mughal GDP control, his wealth could be worth around $20 trillion today. His rule marked the peak of the Mughal Empire's economic power. Despite his immense riches, he led a remarkably austere life, stitching his own caps and writing copies of the Quran to sell for personal expenses. His military campaigns expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent, but constant warfare drained its resources and contributed to its eventual decline. Moving further back, let's enter Renaissance Europe. The richest man of the 16th century was Jakob Fugger, a German banker often called the richest banker who ever lived. He built his empire through banking, mining, and textiles. At his peak, his fortune would be equivalent to around $400 billion today. His influence extended into European politics, funding monarchs and shaping economies. He even played a key role in securing the election of Emperor Charles V by financing his campaign, showcasing the immense political power of wealth. Now, let's see how merchant wealth dominated the 15th century. Cosimo de' Medici, the head of the powerful Medici family in Florence, controlled vast wealth through banking and trade. His family's financial empire fueled the Renaissance, making him not only the richest man of his time, but also a key patron of the arts and culture. He financed the construction of iconic landmarks like the Duomo of Florence and supported artists such as Fra Angelico and Donatello. Despite his immense influence, he ruled Florence unofficially, using his wealth to control politics from behind the scenes, earning him the nickname Pater Patriae, father of the fatherland. Now, we step into the 14th century to meet the wealthiest ruler of medieval West Africa. Mansa Musa, Emperor of Mali was one of the richest people to ever live. His fortune came from gold trade and taxation, and his wealth in today's terms would exceed $400 billion, possibly limitless considering the gold reserves under his control. His legendary pilgrimage to Mecca, where he distributed so much gold that it devalued the currency, remains one of the most extravagant displays of wealth in history. His rule turned Mali into one of the world's greatest centers of learning, with Timbuktu becoming a hub for scholars and merchants alike. His wealth was staggering, but let's step back to another powerful conqueror. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan ruled the largest contiguous empire in history. While he didn't personally hoard wealth, the Mongol Empire's vast lands, trade routes, and tribute systems meant he controlled immense resources. His wealth wasn't measured in gold, but in the sheer power and economic influence he wielded. Now, we move to one of the greatest builders of medieval Europe. Philip II of France was one of the most powerful kings of the 12th century. His wealth came from land acquisitions and restructured feudal taxation, making France one of the wealthiest kingdoms of the medieval era. His reforms strengthened royal finances and laid the foundation for future European monarchs. He was also the first French king to style himself as King of France rather than King of the Franks, symbolizing the rise of a more centralized nation-state. Now, let's explore the riches of the Norman conquest. William the Conqueror, who famously seized England in 1066, became one of the richest rulers of the 11th century. His wealth came from land ownership, conquest, and feudal taxes, making him the wealthiest man of medieval Europe. To solidify his rule, he commissioned the Domesday Book, a detailed survey of England's wealth and resources, which became one of the most important records in medieval history. Now, we move further back in time to the Viking era. The 10th century was dominated by Viking wealth, and Gorm the Old, king of Denmark, was one of its richest figures. His wealth was built through tribute, trade, and land holdings. As a Viking ruler, his fortune was not just in gold, but in the power to control vast northern territory. The Vikings weren't just raiders, they were skilled traders connecting Europe, the Middle East, and Asia through extensive trade routes, which played a crucial role in accumulating wealth. From modern tech moguls to ancient emperors, these figures didn't just accumulate wealth, they reshaped the world, some through innovation, others through conquest, and a few through sheer economic genius. If you found this journey through history's wealthiest fascinating, please like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories. Thanks for watching.